Yeah, so this was a year ago, last January, and Ray Alvarez, who's 90 years old and he is in charge of that store, he was attacked. Now, there was two individuals who had a night where they were committing crimes on the subway and in the street. They were randomly going up to people, demanding money, demanding cigarettes, and when they would refuse, they would attack them. So he was unfortunately the last of the victims they had that night, which was around 3 a.m. So he's working. He does the overnight shift. And one of the gentlemen comes into the store and asks him if he wants to buy a box. Like he has a package. Oh, do you want to buy this? And he's asking him, well, what's inside the box? Like, what type of product are you trying to sell me? So right away he gets mad. He threatens to kill Ray. And then when he says, I don't want anything, he winds up hitting him over the head multiple times and in the chest. So he had broken bones in his face. His jaw was dislocated and he was only able to eat through a straw. But he wound up, and of course he was mad, but he was fuming because he said that it wouldn't have happened if there was more police in the neighborhood. But right away, I mean, to his resiliency, he went back to work.
Can you understand that, Justin Ellick, your newfound generation of slackers and deadbeats? Broken jaw, both eyes blackened, fractured nose. He's 90 years old. They take him to Beth Israel Hospital, which I've been to, 16th Street. They tell him, oh, you got to stay for observation. You could have a concussion. This could be really serious. You're a 90-year-old man. He checks himself out. He comes back and does his shift and has continued to do his shift. And between shifts, when he wasn't feeling that well, he would go into the back where I spoke to him after the attack a few days later, and he lays down on the ground. On the ground. If you happen to be in that area and you know Ray, like I know Ray, you got to go visit Ray. You got to pump him up because it's a year later, and the two persons who were responsible for this vicious attack have been sentenced.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did just get sentenced, which is unusual, right, in New York City for them to actually sentence someone. But they got 5 years and 10 years, respectively, which is a good amount of time.
So the main perp who did the most of the attack got 10 years, and his degenerate sidekick got 5 years. I mean, you don't even get that in Alvin Bragg land for killing somebody in Manhattan. But it's almost like the show Everybody Loves Ray, like Ray Romano.
Yeah.
Everybody Loves Ray. Again, an iconic figure in the Lower East Side across the street from Tompkins Square Park. He's always there, especially the overnight shift.
I mean, he was working at 3 a.m. and he got attacked, and he still is going back there. I mean, he's not even afraid to show up to work.
Yeah, and the hipsters and millennials love Ray because they're in all the dives, they're in all the clubs, they're in all the bars. They come in there and they sit there and he prepares them conic elixirs to help them recover from their inebriation. You got that, Justin Ellick? Just remember Ray. So that's hero number one, Ray. Another incredible story. I mean, there's just no way to replicate this. Many of you have been in the Lower East Side across the street from Stuyvesant Town. 14th Street and 1st Avenue is the Church of the Immaculate Conception. And they've hired a security guard there named John Mack, M-A-C-H, age 57. And he takes that responsibility so personally. He goes, my duty is to guard my church and keep everyone safe. Mm. Because a lot of the older women who would go to church and the older men, knowing that this is the waning time in their life, and they want to be able to go before God in their house of worship, were increasingly not coming because it's so unsafe in that area. It's not far from where Anthony Weiner lives on 14th Street, and he's acknowledged that. Homeless people, emotionally disturbed, drug addicts, gangbangers, drug dealers, really bad. So he's on duty, and all of a sudden, a guy comes up and starts pulling his schlong out, like a lot of folks do when they've been inebriated down in the Lower East Side and all those gin mills and clubs. And he begins to water a car with his wastewater. So John Mack, the guard, goes up to him and he says, hey, guy, there's women and children. Don't be urinating on the car here. Come on, there's a place to go. If you would have told me you needed to use a bathroom, I might have brought you in the church. You can't do that here. The guy starts screaming at him, clearly emotionally disturbed, pulls out a straight edge razor, threatens to slash his throat. And so John Mack is ready. He sees the guy. The guy stalks off. Naturally, a call goes in, 911, 9th Precinct. You can forget about that. It ain't happening. So John Mack is on duty, and guess what? This guy comes back. He's changed his coat. It's now a bright red coat from what was a dull gray coat. So he's not even making the connection. The guy sneaks up on him like a ninja, pulls out that straight edge razor, says, I told you I was going to slit your throat, pulls it out and cuts his throat right at the jugular. John Mack is bleeding out. He's on the floor, but he understands. He's still conscious. He takes his shirt off and he ties it around his neck because he knows he's got to stem the flow of blood. He starts running after this guy. Other citizens, Good Samaritans, try to tackle the guy, but the guy is very deft and he's able to get away. He's still being hunted down by the police. So they take John Mack in the ambulance at 14th Street, 1st Avenue over, where else? Beth Israel on 16th Street. It's right there. They bring him in. They stitch up his whole left side of his throat. 16 stitches. He was a quarter of an inch away from the jugular vein being slashed, and he probably would have bled out.
Yeah, you can see the stitches. They go from his ear to the bottom of his chin. It's tremendous, this cut that he had.
And he's repaired. They tell him, go home, you need to rest, or we'll keep you overnight in the hospital. What do you think John Mack did?
He went back to work.
He went right back to the church. Right back and stood outside of the church, and he said again to everybody passing by who had heard about it on Citizens app in that area. That's why you cannot let the police department of the city of New York and Eric Adams block Citizens app, because what they're trying to do now is not allow anybody to listen to police signals, to police communication on the radio. They're completely attempting to block that. That's how people found out what had happened. They came to the church. They see John Mack. You need to go home. He goes, no, my duty is to guard my church and keep everyone safe.
Yeah, and to your point, if you have that information on things like Citizens app, right away you would have had at a minimum probably the description of the individual, and everyone who lives in the area gets an alert. So they probably, could have had someone call in with a tip.
And you see in Eric Adams, New York City, with his police department, out-of-town Eddie Caban, just useless Eddie Caban now. What a
I
disappointment.
think we need to do a wellness check on Eddie Caban.
Exactly. We'll find both of them up at Con Sofrito, the club that is owned by his brother Richie Caban, who has the State Liquor Authority license, and Jimmy Rodriguez, who can't get a State Liquor Authority license, who has absolutely none of the paperwork necessary to run a legal operation. They're going to padlock that. They stay up there rather than stay down here. Well, guess what? I also had that same experience. Back in April of 1992, before you even knew who I was, Justin Ellick, I was coming out of my apartment, 131 Avenue A, not far from Ray's, just a little north of Ray's, to come to WABC to do the morning show. I was in the midst of a battle with Frank Morano's friends, the Mameluke, John Gotti Sr., John Gotti Jr., and the Gambino crime family. John Gotti Jr., in court testimony, was reported to be stalking me with three guys, and their names, infamous: Mikey McLaughlin, the Irishman, Ruggiero, the Italian, and Kaplan, the Jew, a United Nations crew of bat swingers. And on one morning in April, they saw me coming out of the apartment, ready to come up to WABC, which was at Two Penn Plaza, 17th floor, Madison Square Garden. And before I could get a cab, they ascended on me, all three of them, Kaplan, Ruggiero, and McLaughlin, and they tooled me up, hit me 32 times with baseball bats. Luckily, at that point, David Dinkins, the only thing he had done when he was mayor was put up a fence at Tompkins Square Park because the anarchists were rioting, so he had imposed a curfew. I scurried over the fence. They were unable to complete the attack. They jumped in a car. They popped wheelies, were screaming I should shut my mouth. The cops took me to Beth Israel. They patched me up. I had broken my elbow. And the doctor said, well, we're going to keep you for the next week. You probably have a concussion. You probably have other issues. And I did what both Ray, the candy store owner, did at the age of 90. John Mack, guarding the Church of the Immaculate Conception, did when he was slashed. I said, thank you, but I am checking myself out. And I came back the next morning, and did a show that led to them shooting me 5 times with hollow point bullets.
Maybe you should have stayed in hospital.
When I talked about the fact that John Gotti Jr. had killed a guy at the Silver Fox disco and bar in Ozone Park years before that. Wow, we've come full circle. And you know who it was who reported my attack by baseball bats in April of 1992?
Ray?
Ray.
Oh, wow.
Was the only brave one to come outside and then call the police and let them know that they got Sliwa.
So Ray really is a hero.
Ray is a hero in so many ways. Please, ladies and gentlemen, you want to do something good. Go see Ray, the candy store guy on Avenue A in St. Mark's. He's an iconic figure. Go thank John Mack, who's on duty in front of the Church of the Immaculate Conception at 14th and 1st Avenue, a man's man. And understand that this is old school here, Justin Ellick. You know, we don't fold like cheap cameras. We take a beating and we come back ticking to go out there and do what is necessary to save our neighborhood and save our country.